Mm. Yeah, guys. Bismillah.
Here we go. Are we in?
Yes, sir. We
We
are
are here.
recording and
Great. Salam alaikum, brothers.
wa alaikum assalam.
Walaikum salam.
Welcome to another podcast. First of all, thank you for being here today. It's great to have you guys. Great podcast yesterday. We're gonna do a touch back on what we did, what you guys did yesterday, as I came in the middle of the podcast and asked some questions, and hopefully we can have the continuation. Just to let you guys know, our podcast is not strictly on religion, but those are the main topics that we can connect to view the world and think about things that's going on today. Okay, new things will be coming in the next few days. So if you like it, if you enjoyed this topic, leave a comments there, leave your like, and we'll go for it. So welcome back to Eu Vou Ser Ele. That's the name of our podcast. We're here to explore ideas, stories, and wisdoms that connect all of us today. Today's episode is especially meaningful. We're talking about what we can all learn from Islam in the Quran. Whether you're a Muslim or not, like me, there is a deep wisdom in these teachings that speak to the universal human values like compassion, justice, and reflection. I'm honored to be joined by two incredible people today. They're both family members, Brother D, Blood Brother, and Jacobo Lobo. Our first speaker is Brother D, Diego. He's an English teacher, thinker, and studies of the Islamic nation, known for helping bridge understanding between faith and sharing the faith of reflection on social media. And with us is Jacobo El Lobo.
Jacobo.
Um, Jacobo,
It's
Jacobo. It's Spanish for Jacobo El Lobo. Uh, who's whose journeys with Islam has inspired many, whether through teachings, writings, and personal life experience. They both share thoughtful perspectives on faith in today's world. So thank you both so much for being here. And yeah, let's dive right in. Yeah. We'll have questions for you guys, and I will direct the question to one of them. And if you guys are comfortable, you can answer. If not, just pass the question and we'll move on to something else. Okay. Let's go
Yeah.
to some background understanding of Islam in your life. The first question is there a moment in your life when you felt specially connected to the Quran or your own faith? Let's go to Brother Jake.
So, was there a moment where I felt especially connected to Islam?
Yes.
Um, it's I've had various moments in my life where I felt a connection with uh in Islam. They believe that they have a name for God. They call it Allah. Allah literally translates as the one God. This is the same one God from Jewish and Christian traditions. um, there's a surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Ikhlas. Diego, I'm sure you know it, yeah? Where basically it refers to the divine as incomparable. You cannot compare it to anything worldly. It's beyond human comprehension, right? But we're a part of of this. We're part of this creation, right? Um, and this feeling of connection with divine, I think, is kind of a waxing and waning feeling, like the tides of the ocean, or maybe people feel differently about it. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. And they have concepts like this in Islam where they talk about iman, iman being like the strength of your faith, how it can wax and wane. And so there have been times where maybe I feel a stronger connection with it than other times. I always I don't know if I want to say feel is the right word, but I'm always conscientious of the fact that there's a connection where I try to remain conscientious. I try to remain aware of the fact that I'm connected to things that are bigger than me. I'm connected to other human beings. We're part of the same thing, right? And uh and so if you're gonna this is a general answer. You ask specifically specific times. Uh the
Let's take
very
more
first
of moments, yeah? More a
yeah.
moment, maybe?
Well, the when my daughter was born,
Okay.
I really felt a connection.
Mm-hmm.
Um, After she was delivered by the doctor, I was the first person to hold her, and I
Mm-hmm.
was the first person in the world to speak to her directly. And I spoke to her in Arabic. I whispered to her um, the uh, the call to prayer. Uh,
Oh.
so the first that was one of the times where I felt most connected to Islam.
And
Not
I think I'm not. I can't speak for yourself, Jake, but I think that was like early on when you were first introduced to Islam. It was early on this period of time that happened. Was that true or no?
So this is a funny thing, and many people have asked me that question, like when was I introduced to Islam? And I have specific stories for this, but it was like seeds continued to be planted at different time, and then all of a sudden there was like the
The
growth
wow.
sprouted.
Was it like the wow moment?
For me it was not so much
It
wow
wasn't one
moments.
moment. It was a
It wasn't one
combination of
moment. It
things.
was a combination of like
Okay.
popcorn popping. There wasn't one big bang. There was little seeds continued to be planted and continued to sprout until all of a sudden I had a garden in front of me, if that makes any
I want
sense.
to go back to that moment that you said about your daughter. Was there something, were you ready for that? Did you prepare for that? Was that something that was in your head before, or did something just came out? Like, what was the moment like?
I when my daughter's mother was pregnant, who I'm not with anymore, uh I did a tremendous amount of reading and I went to the mosque a lot. I was living in Tampa, Florida. I chose the apartment for our new family specifically based on where the best women's hospital was in Tampa. We were like 2 blocks from the best women's hospital, so that way she could deliver birth there. And so it was a lot of preparation that led up to that moment. And it was funny, and my memory's a little fuzzy, but I think I think Yasmin's my daughter, maternal grandmother, her mother's mother, came to be with us at that time. And what was funny was uh, the morning that Yasmin's mother went into labor. We actually had an appointment with the hospital to induce labor because she was past due. So it's funny. I mean, it's maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe there's no such thing as coincidence, right? These are things we could discuss.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Mm-hmm.
morning that my daughter was due to be induced, meaning the doctor was going to stick something in my wife and provoke the labor,
Mm-hmm.
she decided to go into labor herself.
Mm-hmm.
Funny coincidence.
Mm-hmm. But did you choose to say those words in Arabic? Was it before or after? Or I mean, was it right in the spot, or were you thinking about
I
this
had been
before?
thinking about this, and I had been reading a lot about um, fatherhood being the man, like being the man of a household
Okay,
as a parent, as a father, studying
interesting.
Islam, studying the both the rights and obligations of the father,
Got it.
family members, daughters, etc., and
Got it.
also how you welcome a child into the world. I did another thing that I don't know if I've ever shared this with you guys or not, and I'm not sure if Diego's familiar with this practice, but when a child's born in Islam, typically after the child is born, there is a practice known as akika. Do you know
Mhm.
akika?
No, not by that name.
But you know what I'm talking about.
I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Well, female or male child,
Okay.
after the child is born, two things are normally done by the parents of the child. You slaughter an animal
Okay.
for sacrifice, a goat or a sheep or a cow if you're rich or whatever, right? And you typically distribute that meat to friends, family, or maybe people at the mosque. I did that, but I paid a butcher to do that. I didn't do that myself. But the other thing that is typical in practice is that the womb hair, the hair that grew while the baby was in the womb, is removed. And
Mm,
so I actually, with clippers, very gently removed the hair off my daughter's head when she was
right.
Oh, wow.
not even a couple
Okay.
days old. And it was
Okay.
funny. I remember this is, again, a lot of memories are fuzzy, but I remember this is that her mother was okay with it. Her mother's not Muslim, but her mother understood that it was important to do this. But and her mother had really no resistance to Akika as a concept and was all for it. But I remember that her mother cried while I was doing it.
Right.
I gave my daughter her first haircut, and so I remember we
I
put a
never, Jake,
little.
I never heard of that. I never heard of that real
Yeah.
quick. But I have heard about the adhan of saying the call to worship,
Yeah.
right? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Yeah, I heard of that. And I also heard, now I'm not, this is my next question I was going to ask you is like,
Mm.
are these things sunnah? Are they obligatory? I haven't heard it. Maybe you can answer. But another thing that I did hear, so you can obviously they're not conscious of this, but you say those things and you put a date in their mouth or something like that. I'm not really sure. I'm really fuzzy on this as well, um, because I'm not a father. I've never had to know about these things. You know what I mean? But it's good to know. So maybe you can tell me.
So
Uh,
again, this
Go
is
ahead.
things that I studied and read 20 plus years ago, and I haven't prepared to be a
Okay.
father since. So I don't remember exactly, but I will tell you that um, in
Because
my
we know
mind,
some of these things are cultural. Like maybe
sure,
it's the
yeah, yeah.
Arab culture
So,
thing.
so,
It's
so
not necessarily
I will share with you because, and this is one of the things that I think a lot of people mistake about Islam is that like it's something that's dictating everything you do. Like I can't even brush my teeth without reading the Quran to know how to do it, right?
right.
That's not a reasonable way to live your life, right? And so you have to obviously, in times of doubt, have faith, right? This is a little bit talking about faith, right? You do your best to learn and prepare yourself as much as you can, but at certain points in time, you go off of faith. So I'll tell you to answer your question, I can't remember if it was considered sunnah or recommended or whatever, but I will tell you that in my reading and preparing for my daughter's birth, I thought there's nothing wrong with delivering these words to a newborn child, whispering
Right.
the adhan, right? So I thought, you know
Right.
what? What better words to whisper to a child than call to prayer as her first
No.
words? Because I mean, anything that I could even imagine is really going to come from an egoistic place, even if it's good intention.
Right.
Very
Right.
interesting. Let's do that. That was really nice. I've never heard that in so many years we knowing each other. And that's powerful. I mean, those are touching moments that's gonna stick with you forever, yeah. And I've never heard that that kind of those kind of actions taken towards an infant just coming out of the womb. So that's really nice to see and hear. What about you, brother D? You have any moments you'd like to share
Uh,
that is special to you in the Quran
well,
or faith of
go.
Islam?
Sure. You mentioned connection to Islam and the Quran. So yeah, I have I think I maybe shared with you guys this before. I'm not really sure. But when I was it wasn't my first. maybe it was. Maybe it was my first direct encounter with Muslims themselves and Islam. Hearing the call to worship, hearing uh, the the Quran itself, here not knowing at the time what these things were and what was happening. But yeah, I remember when I was in Hancock, New York, and I mean, this is a very closed community, as you guys know. Um, and not a lot of diversity in terms of religion, in terms of racial background, nationalities, and things like that. But there was a family who were from Pakistan. And one of the boys of that family was Brother Daniel's best friend. His name was Mohammed. Uh, and I'm 4 years younger. So because of that, you're always following the bigger brother, and his friends become your friends, and his games become your friends, and you go out and you play and you do games and you do these things as much as you can as the younger brother for me. And one of the hobbies, one of the things that we enjoy doing was to play basketball, right? And I remember Mohammed, the friend. I remember him being one of the smartest kids in school. I remember him having good grades. Um, and he lived really close to our house within walking distance. I remember his sister, he had two sisters and a younger brother as well. And the sisters, they would use the veil, the hijab, they would use that. And like I, I was curious, but like any other person, I wasn't brave enough to go up to them and ask them like why they're doing these things and all of these things. And I vividly remember we're playing basketball down at the basketball courts right next to the school. And we're having a great game. And it's me, a couple other friends with Muhammad there. The teams are just even. You know, I think it was like maybe 3-on-3 or something like that, where we usually got together and we played. And basketball is my thing. I love playing basketball, right? And all of a sudden the game started to get really competitive, started to get really good. And Muhammad mentioned he's like, "Hey, I gotta go." I'm like, "Come on, dude. How can you go right now? The game is really good." He's like, "I gotta go to pray." I'm like, "Pray?" And like I was attending church. I would go to Sunday school. I'd go to I even went to like summer camps. I went to different types of churches with different friends, with cousins and things like that. So we are kind of I myself, I could say that I was kind of into that church world. I was kind of, you know, I was brought up in that a little bit, you know. Um, so Muhammad, he says he's got to go pray. I'm like, come on, man. Like we're in a really good game. So he packs up his things and he goes. And he goes home, and I'm like, damn, you just ruined the game. Like, we're in the middle of playing basketball. Like, it was a really good game. He just like, how come you can't just wait, man? Like, pray. What does he pray? Like, I don't even know what this guy believes in. I don't like you have these stereotypes in the back of your head that you don't really know. So much to what Jacob was saying, it's little moments in your life that lead you up to the big moments, right? And so, it goes by, and I'm about to be a senior in college, and I'm about to finish, and I'm finished with school. It's summertime, and I'm finished with school, and I need to go to college. I have absolutely nobody that can take me like a 2-3 hour drive to the school that I was going to. And brother Daniel, I think he was away. Maybe he was in Brazil. No, he wasn't in Brazil at the time, but he was really, really further away. And the people who were supposed to look out for me and take care of me, uh, they they didn't help me in that situation. It was a very tough situation in my life at that time, and you know, I was vulnerable and I was seeking for answers. And one of the people that came up and said, "Yeah, I will take you. I will take you to your school. I just got to stop at in halfway there at a mosque." And remembering at this time, like this is during the war on terrorism, Islamophobia was everywhere, and I was started to become interested in that. And I'm like, okay, sure. And he's like, yeah, if you don't mind, I'll stop at the mosque and then we'll go from there. I'm like, okay. So we go, and on our way there, we're chilling, and then we stop at the mosque, and he's like, "Hey, you could just sit in the back right there. You can just watch us, and it's gonna be really quick." And I'm like, and I'm thinking it's like a church service, right? I'm coming from a church background, right? I'm coming from a Christian background where there's organs and pianos and there's dancing and you're standing up and you're clapping. Well, our church didn't really clap. The Methodist church didn't really clap, but I've been in churches where clapping and dancing, all those things. They have the statue of Jesus in the front and all that. Everybody's sitting down in their pews. They're wearing their best looking dress. Most of the time, I can't really focus because the women like next to me on the right and my left are looking real, real nice. You know. So you guys been to those churches I remember seeing you guys there as well. So Muhammad takes me to a mosque, and as we're walking in, he's like, "You got to take your shoes off, and you got to go wash up over there." I'm like, "What? What for?" Like, I didn't understand any of this stuff. So I go, I take my shoes off. He shows me I wash up and stuff like that, and then we go into the mosque, and then I'm kind of like nervous, These guys, they got huge ass beards. They got huge beards. They look like these evil villains that they show on TV and movies and everything like that. I'm like, oh my God. And then they start saying gibberish things that I didn't understand. And I'm like, what the hell? Like where am I? Like, what's gonna happen here? I was very nervous. I was very apprehensive. And they start bowing down, they start saying things, and they start saying things in English that I can understand. And they start say things that connect with me, because, and this is the connection that I was talking about. It it starts to connect with me because things like social justices, things like taking care of the poor, things, virtues like honesty and sincerity and being patient and humility and forgiveness and forgiving of other people. A lot of these things that my church also believed in. And I was like, okay, this sound, and they used names that I was also familiar with, like Moses, Abraham, Noah, and then they started mentioning Jesus, and I started to become even more interested in that. And I just sat there, and then we finished. It was real quick. It was like 30 minutes. I was like, oh my God, that was fast. I'm usually in church, you have Sunday school. After Sunday school, you have the church services, and then after the church service, you might go downstairs and get some snack. That was the best. And then you go home. So that's probably like 3 hours. But this was nothing like that. It was completely different. And I feel like I was guided by a divine being, which Jacob kind of mentioned earlier, which is Allah. I felt like I was being guided for that moment because I was open up I was open up I was how do I say it? I was open enough to receive this message, to be open enough to understand and to go out and do research and to ask the questions of why, instead of just making those blank judgments. We all make them, but then to stop there and be like, okay, but I really want to know why they do it. What is the reason why these guys are brain down, are bowing down to the ground and putting their forehead on the floor? What is the reason why these guys have huge beards? Why are they walking around in pajamas? So all of these things, it was everything else before my life was kind of leading up to it, up to those type of moments, and uh, yeah, and that's how I felt. That's one of my first connections when I started to get connected with Islam, and then started asking those questions, and all because I was pissed that a friend wanted to leave a basketball game and go pray.
Very interesting. I mean, I know you for all your life, all my life, and I never heard of that story before. So thanks for sharing. Very nice. The family, just adding to what you say, the family is extremely nice family. They were very different than everybody else there. They're very welcoming. They want to share their experiences. They were from Pakistan, I believe. The
Yeah,
father was
Pakistan,
from Pakistan,
Pakistan. Yeah.
the mother too, and you barely saw the mother around and stuff, but she was always bringing you food and welcoming you to your house and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was very curious, and he was a great person, and
I
that
think
boy
he
was
went to
very good.
medical school in the Caribbean or something
Yep.
like that. Yeah.
I think so. But yeah, I well, just for our viewers to know, I'm not a Muslim. I don't have a religious faith directly. I like to see myself as a believer in God. So I like to study and I like to learn about different types of religion. But I was also introduced the sort of the same way that Brother D was talking about, where he said, "Hey, we're going to New Jersey. You want to come?" And I said, "What?" "Yeah, we're going to watch a scholar talk." And I had no
I
idea what the hell
remember
was
that.
that.
I
I had no
remember that.
idea what he wanted, he was talking about. And I was just wanted to go out for a ride. I mean, going to New Jersey is freaking awesome,
It was,
especially living in Hancock. Did you go too? I don't remember
yeah,
if you.
I went. It was a
No,
lecture,
he's
and I
talking
still
to
have that.
me.
Oh, you went?
I don't think
No,
Jake.
no,
I
no,
think it
no.
was.
But Diego and I connected in New Jersey at a different time by coincidence. I don't know
Yeah,
if you remember that, Diego, but it wasn't about
yeah.
the
I don't remember.
scholar.
Oh, I do remember, but we did
Remember we
go.
stayed in that hotel room for the one night? We were
Yeah,
like looking around at potential
Yeah.
apartments and stuff because I
I
don't
I do
remember.
remember.
Yeah.
But Daniel, what Daniel
So
was talking about, that lecture, I still have that lecture if you want to see it again. It was a lecture
what's
by
the
Sheikh
name?
Hamza Yusuf.
Who? Oh, you
You
guys
have
saw
to.
Hamza Yusuf in person? Ah, he's
Bro,
one of
like,
my
and
favorite
Oh,
speakers.
yeah, yeah.
you want to talk about that trip?
Uh,
Talk about it. I'm curious.
I don't remember much about the church, but I do remember the lecture. Because
So
I re-listened to the lecture over again, but I
I gotta
remember
listen to
going there and
that.
everything. Yeah,
I
but go
didn't
ahead,
know
you
you
can talk
had it,
about
but it was very interesting because he was so careful on how he was going to do that. We just said scholars say, let's go, let's take a trip down there. But I think he was so careful on how he was going to introduce Islam to us in a car.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
that was fantastic. Like it was so amazing to start in the simplest thing to say, hey, if they say something that you like, or if you hear something that people like, they don't clap, right? So be careful that certain actions, they will say things and they will do things that is not the norm for us at that time. So I think I was like 16 years old, 17, maybe it was 16, 17, I don't
I
remember, but
If I
but
can
it was
piggyback
a
on that,
long.
one of those stories that Muhammad was talking about. I remember talking about the end of times, and I remember him talking about the angel. One of the angels are going to blow the trumpet at the end of time. I think I remember that part.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
So,
it
so you
was,
guys went with Muhammad to
yeah,
this.
yeah,
I got you, got you, got you.
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we drove, what was it, 6, 7 hours, and we were just there listening to him talk about this, talk about this, talk about this, explaining everything and who Yusuf was. And then we got there, and I thought I was like, oh my God, I'm with Hamza Yusuf, like really, really cool. Um, to to the downside, he wasn't very happy because they were just trying to piggyback
Who
right
wasn't
on.
very happy? Hamza Yusuf?
Hamza Yusuf, like there was a moment that people were just talking. There was a lot of people.
Uh,
There were children everywhere. He was very upset at some point because they kept using his name to publicize an idea that they would be donating money. So they kept saying that, hey, donate money, donate money, donate money. He's like, hey, you gotta stop. You got to stop that. This is not where I'm here for.
Yeah.
And then like he went back to, and then he kind of told the children like, "Hey, take the children back around. I can't concentrate on the lecture." Dude, it was so amazing. That guy has such a sweet
yeah.
voice.
Well,
What
he
I
Very.
started
rem
his own university, but I have a quick question.
Yeah,
Was this gathering like a gathering of Muslims, or was it?
it was
Go
it
ahead.
was it was. Let me. So it was like Ixna. You know Ixna?
I don't
Isna?
recognize the term.
It's a North American Muslim, whatever. It
Hmm.
was like a conference,
Okay,
Yeah.
right?
but it was open to
And
Muslims and non-Muslims alike.
yes, yes, yes. And what I remember from when he came up on this before he came on the stage, what I remember was that he was upset because some of the lecturers and some of the lecturers before him and the people who were trying to get organized and trying to get donations out of them, I
Yeah.
remember him being upset at the audience because they weren't paying attention. They weren't giving them enough attention to those lectures, and
Hmm.
those lectures were giving out pretty important information.
Hmm.
That's what I remember out of it. And yeah, like I think I remember him, like he wasn't rude or anything like that, but I remember him
No.
mentioning, hey, the children should be in the back. We should have our own
But
separate
this
place
kind of speaks to
for
what
them.
you were saying
Yeah.
before, Diego, and one of the big differences between um, Islamic prayer service and, for example, Christian prayer service. And again, I don't want to compare Islam to just Christianity, and I don't really want to compare so much. But coming from that background, the clapping and the singing and the stand, where a lot of times as a participant in an Islamic congregation for a prayer, your obligation is to remain silent and listen to what the imam is saying. And then once
Reflect.
the yeah, to reflect. And once the prayer is completed, sure, if you want to socialize and share things with people, but the main goal is to gather for prayer. And then on Fridays, the main goal is to gather for prayer and listen to the khutbah, which is just a sermon.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Anyway, so thank you both of you for sharing it. I didn't even know some of these stories. It's really cool. So let's go to the educational part of this, okay? Let me ask you a question. I don't know. We can tackle both ways. You guys can just go back and forth at it. What areas of Islamic thought or study are you most passionate about? The areas meaning like the Quran, the Hadith that you guys talked about it, and spirituality, or a historical background, or the combination of them. Like, what is it that you're most passionate about when we're talking about Islam?
Who do you want to go first?
All
I'll
right.
say this first. When we refer to Islam, make something clear to people watching. Islam is a word that means submission. In a religious context, it means submission to God or Allah, the one God. And so when you ask the question, what are the things you're passionate about in Islam? What the way I interpret the question is what is it in my existence that motivates me to retain this submission, or in this case retain this focus on the fact that there's something bigger than me, which I think really is in my mind, in my perspective, is I have to constantly remember, even though I feel like the universe sits somewhere behind my eyes in the back of my head because we're all kind of the centers of our own universe in an egocentric way. But through reflection, you realize, no, I'm part of something and there's something even bigger than me. And so that's what helps me stay focused on it. Um, I've read the Quran, the entire Quran, many, many, many times. I try to make it a point to read the whole Quran at least once per year. I have not succeeded every year, but most years I've succeeded in reading the entire Quran. When I say reading it, what I mean is I read a translation of the Quran because what the Quran, Al-Quran literally means the recitation or the reading. So the writing that's in the books is not technically the Quran. The sounds that are made that people can hear is the Quran. So when you hear them saying the verses of prayer, that is the Quran. The Quran is sound. So for me, the sound is one of the things that really captures my attention. And prayer is one of the things on combined with sound that really captures more than my attention because it's like mind and body connecting. The physical aspect of prayer, and what I mean to those who don't understand what I mean by this, of course, everything's physical. If you're praying in a Buddhist temple, you're praying, but you're not sure what your religion is, but you're just, raising your hands up like and talking to God. However it is you pray. But in Islam, there is a ritualistic pattern of physical movements that goes along with prayer. And that physical movement and the actual gathering of people congregating together, shoulder to shoulder, facing the same direction without any sort of image in front of them. Prayer itself, and especially congregational prayer, really has a big impact on me. Um, it's hard to explain, but this combination of sound, physical movement, and congregation has a tremendous impact on me.
Okay.
Great.
Uh, for me, can you? So your question was, can you repeat the question real quick?
Yes. So my question is, what areas of Islamic thought or studies, the
Okay, yeah,
studies of Islam, are you most passionate about? Are you passionate about the Quran, the
okay.
Hadith, a mix of them, the historical part, the spirituality between them? What is it that
Yeah.
triggers you to study Islam?
Okay. What first attracted me to Islam wasn't about God, Muhammad, the Quran. Well, the Quran, yes. The first things that attracted to me Islam after reading the Quran and learning a little bit about it was the solutions for humanity, and especially the social issues like classism, racism, women's rights, uh, caring for the poor, caring for the orphans. Those are the first things that jumped out at me and caught my attention because I've dealt my, because from a personal perspective, I've had to deal with those things and I lived in those worlds. So I was very interested from Islam because what the solutions to humanity's problems were. That's what really gravitated me to it. Afterwards, later on, I started to become uh, more interested in my own tradition and trying to understand my own tradition and having a comparison between my own tradition and maybe other faith groups out there, right? So comparative religion. So I would listen and read some things that I could about Islam and how they see the other and how the other sees Islam, and also about Christianity and my own tra- traditional faith, right? That was imposed on me from a very early age, right? Most of us go through life without ever asking the question of who I am, where do I come from, why do I speak this language, why do I believe what I believe in. Most people just they don't ask those really fundamental questions. And early on, uh, I had to grow up a little bit quicker and had to contemplate and ponder on these questions. And then I looked through the scope of the Muslims, and I looked through the scopes of non-Muslims and also my own tradition. So I became interested in comparative religion. And then from that, it led to the interest of dawah, of giving a message to non-Muslims to hear people talk about Islam and kind of like preaching about it to people. You know what I mean? Um, I don't like that translation, but that's kind of essentially what it is. So I became interested in that, and then I became more interested in the faith itself, in the religious aspect, about the divinity, about not the divinity, about the divine, about the oneness of God, about, and then that God Himself has sent prophets and messengers to different nations. You know what I mean? And about these prophets and these messengers, I became interested in that, and more importantly, about the biography of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, blessings and peace be upon him, right? So I became more interested in that, and then be interested in Isa, in Jesus himself, about different perspectives and different viewpoints of who was this man Jesus Christ, that I was told so much about as a young kid, right? I was kind of ingrained into my head. From there, I jumped to history, to the history of Islam. What happened after the Prophet Muhammad, after he died, and what happened to the Ummah, the Muslim community, right? What happened after that? You know, and at this point now, I'm interested in different sects of Islam, right? So we have the Sunnis and the Shiites, and there's different sects. Majority of Muslims around the world are Sunnis by 80%. There's a small majority who are Shiites, but doesn't really matter. I'm interested in those things, and I keep asking those questions. Why do these people believe what they believe in? Why do they do that? Why do they do this? What is the difference? What is the similarity? And I like those. So that's what really catches my eye and has been really interested to me over this process of uh, joining into a faith that is not my it's not my forefathers' faith, not that I know of, and so yeah, I hope that answers the question.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm gonna touch up on all of those key ideas you talked about. Because I'm gonna go back to the historical part of both of you. I know that I grew up with Mr. D here, and we were brought up to be Catholics, especially going into the United States. In Brazil, there wasn't much to it, except that we saw a lot of churches and we saw people going to churches. And we remember like church people coming to orphanages and all these kind of things.
Oh man,
Catch our
yeah.
religious background a little bit later, but I know that going to the States, it was very keen on going to church every Sunday, going to Sunday school, going to not only one church, but different Catholic churches. My question is exactly for Jacobo El Lobo. Like, what was your family experience with the Christianity? Do you feel you learned a lot about Christianity at an early age?
So, I I grew up a lot at my grandmother's house, Judy. And one of the things that was important to her was that the family goes to church every Sunday. And as a small child, less at starting before I was even 5 years old. I mean, starting like 3 or 4 years old up until I was a teenager. I went to church every Sunday that I was at Judy's house. I went to church. I can remember, I don't remember one, but I remember one time not going to church at Judy's house, and she privately let me know, hey, if I want to come over to her house on the weekends, it includes going to church on Sunday, whether I like it or not. And so I just that was an okay deal for me. I liked coming over to Judy's house so much that I was like, all right, if I had to give my Sunday morning 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours to the church, and that's all my grandmother's really asking of me. So that's what I did. Um,
Why did you like going to her house so much?
I think for another podcast, I'm happy to talk about that, or maybe off the
Okay, all
podcast,
right.
but I think it's
Yeah,
less
that's fine.
relevant here. Um,
Yeah, it is. It is.
in any case, I will tell you though that before about 12 or 13-ish or so, 10, 11, 12, 13, I can't remember. Going to church every Sunday meant going to Sunday school. I didn't actually participate fully in the church congregation. All the children under who were not yet like confirmed, and this was a Methodist church, we would go to Sunday school for the first part of the church service. And there were usually women there who were associated with the church who used to teach us different things, and we used to do like arts and crafts, but they would always teach us stories about either Jesus or prophets from the Hebrew Bible. So I learned about I all the stories, and like Diego was saying when he went to the mosque, he heard the names of prophets like Moses and Jacob and Abraham, etc. I learned about all those prophet stories in Sunday school as well, and also like Diego. I studied comparative religions, college classes, etc. But I'm sorry, I lost track of the question. What was the question? Oh, my experience in church. So my experience started in Sunday school, right, where um, members of the congregation were teaching children stories about the life of Jesus, like him um, separating the fish and the loaves to feed everybody in the crowd, stories about the prophets, etc. And then kind of graduating into the church congregation where I didn't have to go to Sunday school anymore because I was old enough to just sit there and listen to the entire sermon, sing the songs, and read the Bible verses, etc. Um, and so.
How much do you think you learned about Christianity through all of this experience?
So that's a good question, right? Because I learned like as a child and a young man, a teenager, right? I would say that I learned the moral lessons, or at least the intended moral lessons of these stories of Jesus and the prophets, more so than I actually learned the details of the stories so much. What I mean is like you kind of learn um the general plot, of the
Mhm.
Bible without necessarily always going into profound detail in the scripture. What's funny is when I actually stopped going to church is when I ended up reading. I read the entire Bible when I was in college, and started getting into comparative religions after I stopped attending church services. And it was funny as a teenager. I remember when I went to college, I used to have this big chain with a cross that I used to wear as a freshman, right? And I was proud to wear that, not only because you kind of had a little bit of the bling culture, like, hey, I got some nice jewelry on, but I made sure there was a cross right in the middle to let people know it's not just about jewelry. I believe in God, right? But I will say something that I didn't focus on in Christian theology that became very clear to me when I was living in Tampa and I got more exposed to Islamic doctrine was the idea of the trilogy. I'm sorry, the Trinity. Uh, I said
Trilogy.
trilogy, right? Thinking Star Wars. But 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 the Trinity is fundamental to the overwhelming majority of Christian sects and theology, and that is the concept that um, God is both God the Father, God the Son Jesus, and the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost, depending on how you interpret that, and that they are both three and one in three. And I'm not going to try to explain the Trinity, but what I realized when I encountered Islam is that the Trinity is a hard circle to square for me personally. And I never, and maybe it's because Protestant sects, as compared to Catholicism, and tend to focus less on Jesus. In the Methodist Church, of course, they talked about Jesus, but there was not an emphasis always on, like I Judy would tell me to pray every night before I go to bed, and she kind of gave me some advice on how to pray, etc. Uh, but I always prayed to God. Even as a small child, I never thought, "Hey, Jesus, deliver this message to God for me." Which I think, I'm not trying to belittle. I'm just trying to make the language simple so people watching can follow my train of thought. So I'm not intending to offend anyone, but I never thought that, okay, in the name of Jesus, God, blah blah, Jesus, help me achieve these things or whatever I was praying for. Um, I always just prayed directly to God, and so I never focused on the Trinity aspect, and it's a detail that kind of just went right over my head in all my years of participating in church. I feel like the Baptists, you remember like Abby and Robbie's church, their pastor focused a lot more on Jesus than the Methodist church did, as far as like an intermediary.
Mhm.
And in Catholic churches, I think there's also a focus, but it's not so much during the sermon because Catholicism. I had friends who were Catholic, and when we went to Oneida, we went. I don't know if you remember, we went to Catholic church with Hobson and Eduardo. Um, it's more. It seems a lot of times Catholic services are more ritualistic, and so you know as a young man or a child, you're not the Latin that they use in the church service is not always registering with you. They do a lot of prayers in Latin, and so I I guess I'm just trying to give an overall context. One of the biggest things that escaped me in my Christian education was the Trinity. I just didn't pay attention to it, and it never landed on me.
Yeah, that's very interesting because as you were talking, I kept thinking about our early year because I went to Sunday school, um, and it was almost like they just tell you what they want you to hear,
Yeah,
but very seldom do they allow you to. It is just like in schools, like any kind of education. They tell you what they want you to hear, and they don't provide the opportunity for you to question.
sure.
And I think inside of these religions, when you're young, they just pretend that this is what you have to know. This is what's important that we feel is important to you. So these gaps start opening up, and these kind of memories stays with you. It's like, okay, I understand it exists, I understand it is there, but I have no idea why that thing is so important. And it just, as you get older and you start questioning, you start understanding better because you're going to your own studies, but then you either fall into something else or you are attached to something that is more meaningful, that makes more sense, right? And it should be the other way around. When you're younger, you should be diversed into that idea, slowly answering questions, da da da. As you get older, you just metaphor, you're just growing into whatever you believe in. But in our case, especially for both of you that talked about that, I think that's something that had a little bit of a fault behind it of those people that were there at the time. So that's the question. That was the intention of the question, to try to understand how much did you have, and then those moments that you guys both talked about were so important. Let's continue to this
No,
personal growth.
I really like your point though. I really like your point because again, this is this is we're here to talk for our own purposes. We're not claiming to be religious authorities in any way, shape, or form, talking about our own
Um,
personal experiences. But I think you're right. I think anyone who, for example, while you were talking, what I was imagining is somebody in a Sunday school is going to be looking at us and say, "Hey guys, you see Diego and Jacobo? This is why we need to educate our kids so they don't leave the church because we failed these guys in educating them properly." So I'm picking up what you're putting down, and it's a valid point if you're going to play devil's advocate, to use a Christian term, right? Is that okay? We're educating our children, we're putting them in the church, but how much are we really? How holistic is the education, right? What are they really getting from Sunday school? What are they really getting from church service? And I will tell you this, and this I think you might find interesting as a church congregant, as a young man and a teenager, because I reverted to Islam officially at 21 years old. Until that time, I had learned more about Christianity in Sunday school than I did in the actual church services. And I learned more about Christianity in college through college classes than I did in the church services. So Sunday school and
yeah,
college really gave me
yeah,
everything I knew about Christianity, right?
yeah,
But the church services themselves, uh, and part of it might be my fault, but it just maybe there's not enough time, maybe it's a structural thing or whatever. But I
yeah.
understand 110% what you're getting at there, and it's a valid point. It's a valid point
Right.
for any culture that wants to remain cohesive. You have to educate your youth.
For sure. And I would like you guys to use this platform here, this opportunity to teach me and teach us about it. And one of the questions I have, this is for Brother D. How does the Quran guide you in making everyday decisions? Especially in the world where we often feel overwhelmed about so many things. How does the Quran help you?
Okay. Can I just chime in on what we were talking about a little bit earlier because I
Of
didn't get an
course.
opportunity to. Young people, and I think you guys into education and you know this. If you tell them something, they're gonna do it. They're gonna believe it. If you tell them that there's a big fluffy bunny in the sky and his name is El Lobo Jocobo, and that he's almighty and more powerful, and you say that's why you give them explanations like that, they're gonna believe it because they don't have that frame of references. They're not at that point where they're questioning and they're studying and they're doing those things. So um, being young and being in the church, and you guys were there some of that time and period, um, I think I think what Jacob was talking about is the basic fundamentals of Christianity. I don't think that will never leave my brain, like, right? I think that's indoctrinated in there, that is put in there, that is placed, right? That, he talked about the Trinity, he talked about the divinity of Jesus Christ, and he talked about these different things. Those things I will take, and I'm like a parrot. I will say those things, when asked, like automatic, because it was put in there, you know what I mean? But later on in life, like Daniel was talking about, to question those things and to understand, that's when you question and you try to understand where these thoughts and these ideas are coming from. And I don't think it's very easy for most people just to accept them as truths. And that's why we don't have a lot of reverts or converts, people coming from one culture and going to a different culture. Um, so so yeah, I think it's difficult. I remember another church story. I remember these churches in these different events that they would have. They would have like an all-night event. They would have basketball and sports, and I was into sports, and they would use these things in order to entice young people, and they were going after young people in order to share their word, their message, or their faith with you in order to bring you in order. And I remember I'm just going to this basketball tournament, and all of a sudden it's like, hey guys, stop, stop, stop. We're gonna have a 30-minute sermon. We're gonna talk about Jesus Christ and how he died for your sins. And I'm like, what? Like,
That sounds
okay,
like the
let's sit
Baptist
here.
church.
The Baptist church did that a lot,
Mm.
right? Methodist did that a lot. Different churches and different events that I would go to, and I'm like, oh, okay. Hey, you can't play basketball unless you have a little talk over there in the corner with a pastor, whatever his name is. I remember that vividly. Like, I'm like, what? I just came to play basketball. Well, you first have to go over there, talk to him for a little bit, and then you can play. you know, in an environment where those resources and those things are very limited, you know what I mean? You want to gravitate to it, you want to go to it and participate, but there's what do you call it? There's
Posing.
it's not imposing. It's like if you do this, then you can get this. You know what I
Kind of
mean?
like the
And
carrot and the stick. They're putting a
yeah,
carrot like we
yeah,
got
yeah. They
basketball.
throw it out in front of you, and they're like, "Oh shit!" So I
Now, to be
remember
clear,
those.
not to interrupt you, but I think that's something that's not unique to Christianity. I think that's the case in a lot of
Absolutely, yeah,
cultures. I,
yeah.
I, I want to make sure people understand. We're not. I don't think you intend it that way either. That's why I'm saying
No,
this is that a lot of cultures to reinforce their message, whether it's a national culture, a subculture, a religious culture, whatever, want to reinforce things to the youth. How do you get young male attention? Well, young
right,
males usually like to run around, so give them a place to run around.
yeah,
And when they get tired
yeah.
or you get
Most,
tired of
yeah,
watching them run around, have a little talk with them.
yeah. Most churches, because I played soccer in some of these churches around here. It's the same idea. Like, hey, can
Mm.
we use your facility? Most of these churches, they have gyms. You
Mm.
know, they have big, huge gyms. You wouldn't even know it. You would just think it's just church, but it's not. Like the front is just church, and the back is like a youth center with huge gyms and big things going on in order to attract the youth. Um, I've never, I've known that there's youth center and soccer things and like that in Islam, but I've never felt that way with Islam. Because probably because I'm older and I haven't been in those spaces,
Well,
but
and
I
we
don't.
also have to
I'm
give
pretty
the.
sure. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure that's happening as well, just like you mentioned.
I agree with you. I've never felt imposed upon by Islam, but part of that is, um, I think the videos. Part of it is also we also gravitate towards it. So it's like not feeling imposed upon by your favorite flavor of ice cream. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
obviously
absolutely.
obviously we have a bias, and so the reason why I say this is because I don't look at things like that in a negative light, regardless of whether it comes from a culture or an ideology I agree with or not. You and your community have every right to educate your youth how you see fit, right? Just because I
Yeah,
disagree maybe with some ideas, those are your children in your community. Educate them how you see fit, but educate them, right? Because while you were talking about your little basketball tournament experience, et cetera, going to the churches, et cetera, as I thought there were a lot of times when we went out to the basketball courts by ourselves, and sometimes it devolved into fights or not amongst us necessarily, but there's no it's not necessarily an entirely negative thing because you learn autonomy as a young person and how to deal with conflicts yourself. But sometimes it can devolve into situations where maybe it would have been better if an adult was around.
yeah. So yeah. So getting back to Daniel's questions, how has the Quran affected me? I think in a everyday life. Is that right, Daniel?
Everyday decisions, yeah.
Everyday decisions in life. I think it's really selfish, but I gravitate to it more whenever I see struggle, whenever something is happening in my life. And I would pick up the Quran and then I would read some very simple passage. Maybe I'll just read something like the Fatiha, which is like the first surah. It's the first chapter of the Quran. Very, very simple that basically majority of Muslims already know. And I will read that, and that will help me give me a better sense of purpose and place me in a better sense of direction and realize what is important, what is not important. You know what I mean? And why are we doing this? Why am I doing this? What is my intentions behind certain decisions and why am I doing this? Am I really and also I can go back to the Prophet Muhammad's life and I would get lessons out of those moments that he had, right? And we talked about one of them before, and we're gonna have a podcast a little bit. We're gonna continue that series with Brother Jacobo.
Can you give us
So
a specific,
Well,
are you
sure,
willing to share a specific moment that you use those principles for some kind of diverse struggle that you had?
a specific what? A specific example of the Quran?
A specific moment in your daily life
Okay.
that you needed to use those faith that you said there.
Uh, man, I don't know if I want to share those. Let me see.
do you mind if I
If you
share
don't want, it's
something real
fine.
quick?
Sure, sure, sure,
It's very
sure,
brief.
sure.
So
Okay, go
Diego
ahead, go ahead. I
mentioned
was gonna say about go ahead.
Surah Al-Fatiha, which is sometimes referred to as the oft recited verses, right? Um, and I will tell you sometimes as I don't know if you want to call it a focusing tool, but if I sometimes feel like I'm losing focus, I almost like a reflex recite Surah Al-Fatiha to myself.
Okay, yeah.
In 23 years, I don't think I've gone a single day where I haven't recited Surah
To the
Al-Fatiha
Fatiha, yeah.
and I don't mean like I say it out loud so everybody can hear. Just sometimes I'm like, oh, I just whisper it to
Right,
myself. It's so
right,
quiet.
right,
Sometimes when I'm like I really need to focus, Surah Al-Fatiha helps me focus. If I just
right.
recite
What
it
is
to
it?
myself, it's
What is it?
Surah Al-Fatiha is the
So
opening
let me
verse.
let me translate it, and then you can do it in Arabic,
Go
okay?
ahead, go ahead.
Okay, so it's all praises due to God, the Lord of the universe, right? The beneficent and the merciful, the Lord of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, and we alone we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of the ones you have blessed, not those who you have incurred your wrath upon, nor of those who have gone astray. So it's very similar actually to the Lord's Prayer,
Yeah,
right?
very,
Which
very
we learned
similar.
very early on. That's ingrained in our brains. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy
Be thy
name.
name,
Thy kingdom come,
thy
thy will
will
be
be
done on
done,
earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread as we forgive those who as we forgive those who trespass against us.
and deliver
Let
us
us
from
not
evil.
deliver us from evil and yada yada yada, right?
Yeah,
So
yada
it's
yada
it's
yada. You
very
remember exactly.
not exactly. Like I forgot the end. Um, so I'll admit to that. So yeah, whenever I read it, I'm like, oh man, like why am I doing this? Thinking like some difficulty that I'm having with family or friends, and I'm like, okay, like let me be a little bit more forgiving. If God can forgive me of my sin, and He's all forgiving and all merciful and all powerful, you know what I mean? I can forgive my brother for being a douchebag. I can forgive my sister because she just doesn't know, and maybe I don't know, and I need to be patient with her. And you know what I mean? Maybe I'm forgiving. Maybe I don't want to forgive her. I don't want to forgive her, or maybe I don't want to forgive him. But ah,
Monkey
yay!
back.
Sorry, I don't know. I don't know. I'm speed testing my internet right now, and I've got over 150 of download speed. I don't know if it's my computer, 100 180. There's a ton of 190, over 200 downloads. In any case, I don't know. I think sometimes, yeah, even my uploads over 100. I don't know what it is. In any case, I'm back. I'm turning on the hotspot on my phone just in case, so that way maybe I can default to that if it
All right.
disconnects.
How
Um,
much time do we have?
so I will say this. It's still recording, but I think the recording stopped for a minute there when I was gone.
Fine. Yeah, yeah. So how much time do we have left?
That's up to you. I mean, this is your show.
Oh, great. Okay. So that was really nice. Uh, let's talk about your ethic and modern life. How can Islamic values like justice, mercy, and compassion help addresses today's biggest social issues?
Diego, you talked a lot about social justice being something that attracted you to Islam. It's also an attractive trait to me, but why don't you take a shot at this first?
Uh, how can Islam address modern
Let's say that
social
you, of
issues?
course, I was just thinking, you are, um, you only had Islam to fix some of the problems that we have today. How do you see Islam? What parts of Islam do you think would help the social issues that we have today?
I think family. I think uh, the tight knit core and idea of the family, um, is in our current state and society is breaking down, especially in the Western world, and you see in the third world countries and uh, and now put the Muslim world in there, those core value core family values are still intact, right? So I think those are due to a variety of different reasons. But I think in the Islamic world, I think it has to do with uh, what Islam, how Islam values the family and values the women, how Islam values the men, and how yeah. So I think that's one way.
So,
Huh?
to piggyback on something that Diego mentioned, I think earlier in this very podcast, um, or maybe it was a previous one, I don't remember, but Jesus as a prophet and for the Christians who built a religion around him, um, is very unique in the sense that he had no responsibilities to the community in the sense that he had no governing to do. Jesus was a social, I'm not saying anything that's controversial. Jesus was a social critic and a loud social critic, but Jesus never had political power. So he never had to assume responsibility to govern a community. Prophets such as Moses, who a lot of Muslim theologians have compared Muhammad to Moses, is similar to that in that Moses, according to tradition, led the Jews out of Egypt and then became a governor and a leader of his people, where
Right.
Muhammad led his congregants and his followers out of Mecca originally and then became a governor and a leader of people. And so one of the things that one of the things that happens is that I'm sorry, one of the results of this is that Islam is more than a religion in the same way that even Judaism is more than a religion, is that it seeks to do more than just guide people towards reflective thought. It actually seeks to organize society. Like it's
Structure and
explicit in
organize society.
it's explicit in the religion. It's not something that's interpreted, right? It's not like Christian theologians say, "Oh, we should take the Bible and implement it into society." That was never even an issue in both Judaism and Islam. It was always a societal reformation project more than just a religion and more than just a social critique. A lot of people have compared Christianity to Buddhism in that it's more about self-reflection and social critique than it is about organizing people. And so this is one of the things I think that lends Islamic thought to resolving certain issues is that from its very core and from its very beginning, it was always a social revolution. Similar to Moses and leading the Jews out of slavery in Egypt. It was always a social
Yeah.
revolution.
What he was asking is
Well, no,
how can
he asked
this
how does it apply to this?
to the modern
Right. And so it's been being applied. I mean, there are so many. The Quran, if you look at the Quran carefully, it very much has parallels in concept, not necessarily in its actual structure, to the Hebrew Bible, in that it's one giant law book in one sense. There's entire chapters dedicated to how to deal with inheritance when the head of the family dies or when this person dies. This person should get this percentage. This person,
yeah
if he leaves daughters, this and this and this. There are explicit how to deal with fasting, how to deal with sexual relations with your wife,
usury
how to deal with lending and usury,
usury
how
yeah
to deal with divorce, specifically how to deal with divorce, how to deal with
with
disagreements and
war
conflicts amongst the people, how to deal with distribution of gains from
of
war,
wealth,
etc., how to deal with
yeah.
prisoners of war, how to deal with
Captives of
all.
war. Yep.
I mean, so when you ask what can it do between the Quran and the Quran is like the Quran is like the instructions, and the Hadith is like, well, here's the methods to carry out the instructions. So
There's the
when you look
instructions, and yeah, absolutely.
methodology, right? And so it's a very comprehensive thing. And then, of course, like anything, we defer to our leaders who have spent their lives studying this like experts, right? You don't go into surgery and be like, oh, shoot, that guy over there in the corner looks like he's free. Hey, buddy, come grab a scalpel and open me up. No, you look for the doctor who studied and put his whole life dedicated to doing this. So, again, to be clear, not a religious authority, but intelligent enough to realize certain things, and then we defer. You have to have leaders in every community. Not everyone can be the leader.
You
Great
said
answer.
that perfectly. That leads to my last question. And it's a very, very interesting one. I'd like for both of you to really pay attention because it's a long one. But I think it's so critical to the moment that we live
Okay,
in today. Okay, brother, do you good?
I'm good.
All right. So let me go at it, and then we can kind of work on it so we understand, and we give you guys some time to answer. Choosing your own beliefs can be a problem when you're trying to live in a community together. There has to be something that unite us in order for us to live as a community. If everybody chooses their own beliefs, we will have a problem living together. How would you address the choice conflict between freedom of choice and religion as a philosophical belief that unites people? Let's digest all of that kind of idea because Jacob, you said something really, really interesting that you said Muslim communities gather together to form this close bond among each other. And that's what makes it so strong. But other religious communities try to do the same thing. And because of this freedom of community, a freedom of religion, as you can pick and choose, creates these community conflicts between them. How
Mm.
do we solve that in a modern world today?
Could I just start real quick?
Go ahead.
We have we have actual examples because we have actual examples, and if you look at Islamic history, we have examples of Muslims ruling a diverse community, right? A diverse groups of people under one banner, under under one Sharia, right? Under one law, right? They might be the rulers, but other people are able to practice their faith and their beliefs, and they had lived under this system in relative peace, right? So we have concrete examples to answer your question. Okay, you want to add anything to that, Jake?
So I'm gonna go big picture without examples for the moment to answer
Okay, yeah,
because
that's where I was going. I didn't.
no, that's fine. Because the question is an awesome question, and it's something that I think about, right? Because I think what you're getting at is not only religious communities, but non-religious communities, secular nation state communities, right? because some people don't believe in God, period, and have no time for any of this. And guess what? That's their right. Because, like Diego said, maybe in the last podcast, one of the fundamental concepts of Islam is that there is no compulsion in religion. You cannot compel someone to believe. Now, that's different from an agreed upon public order, but I'm going to come to that, right? So, first and foremost, there's no compulsion in religion, nor should there be. I agree with the concept entirely. But how do
That
we
is an
deal?
Islamic concept, okay? So that's not you. That's an Islam
Yeah,
concept
yeah, it's
that's
an
in the
Islamic
Quran. Yeah.
concept.
Okay.
Um, Now, let's take it to Brazil and the US, for example, because there's a lot of parallels, and if there's something different, you guys can jump in for me. But both Brazil and the US are pretty much secular pluralist societies. And what I mean is there's a separation of religion and state, and there's a lot of different cultural and subcultural currents in communities, different ethnicities, different races, different religions, different non-religious ideologies that exist in these countries. And how does the community retain cohesion and unity when there's so much difference of thought, opinion, and ideology? And of course, there's no easy answer to this, but coming from an Islamic perspective, let's first deal with Islam in the U.S. and Brazil. Muslims coming to this country, or those who revert, who are native to these countries, are in the minority. And if you're going to stay living in this country, then you have to abide by the laws that have been deliberated and agreed upon by democratic process or consensus or whatever the rules of the land are. In the Quran, it says if you find that you're living in a country where you cannot practice your faith, God has made the world a big place. Migrate. You don't have to stay where you are. Again, easier said than done for some people, but we're talking about the US and Brazil right now, right? I don't feel like Brazil or the US prevents me from following the core tenets of my faith in Islam. I feel like I can practice. Nobody tells me I can't go to the masjid. No law sponsored by the state tells me that I can't do that. Are there individual people who might be closed-minded or bigoted or prejudiced against it? Yes, that's different, but you're always going to find different prejudice and bigotry that exists amongst people. But my very being here is me acquiescing to the right of the state, and they in no way, shape, or form are impeding me from my religion. I go to the mosque every Friday right here in Brazil. Nobody stops me from doing that. And Brazilians have the right to not believe the same way I do, and they have the right to decide whatever they want. The country claims to be a democracy, and they set up processes for voting, etc., to elect leaders and create laws. That's fine. That's fine. The majority of the population agrees to that by both their actions or non-action. And so I accept as a part of the community that is the overarching context for public order. Now,
Great. Oh,
so that's my theoretical concept answer. And if that makes sense.
sure, 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 sure. I'm gonna close this up and then I'm gonna leave for you guys the last part. But I'd like to add that I wish we had religious scholars making world decisions instead of politicians. I think we would have so much better, and we had this before in the past,
Hmm.
right? But when we bring politicians in, there's only one thing is just worry about myself. How can I get more? How can I make more? How can I take advantage of the other guy who has less? So I leave that for the last final thoughts for you guys. If you could tell us a little bit about how can we go about becoming a Muslim? How can I learn more about the Quran? How can I learn about more about Islam? What are your thoughts and your values to this great religion that has been growing more and more every year? Let's start with Brother D. Leave your final thoughts.
Yeah. going back to what Jacob was saying, if you want a concrete example of a diverse community coming under Islamic rule, um, you can look at 800 years of Spanish rule in Al Andalus. You can research that, Google it, and try to get an understanding of how these three faiths came together in relatively peaceful times for 800 years. And throughout that time, um, they flourished. Even the minorities in that nation, they flourished. So I'll leave that at that. How can somebody? What was your question? How can somebody know more about Islam? Where can they go to? Um,
Mhm.
I I would advise them to the first thing my advice would be is to understand your own faith, to understand your own background, and start asking the hard questions. Really dive deep into what you believe. Ask those deep questions. What is the purpose of life? Why am I here? What where am I going? How did I get here? Why do I believe what I believe in? So ask those questions to yourself, and question everything. And then from there, um, be sincere about what you're learning about, and you know look through um, different perspectives of where your traditional beliefs come from, and try to understand from different views uh, of what they believe in. So I would start there, and in Islam in particularly, I would advise somebody just to read about the life of the Prophet Muhammad. Just pick up a biography and read about it, and be sincere and open about it. And again, read different accounts from a Western perspective to a Muslim perspective. Read different views of um, who this man was, and then come to your own conclusions um, about it. And then, what is this thing that he claimed? What is this book that he claimed that was from God? And then you pick up a Quran, um, and then you start reading that. So I think that's a good start for anybody who wants to learn anything about Islam. Obviously, speaking to Muslims goes a long ways as well. um, a practicing Muslim, a knowledgeable Muslim, I think that would help as well.
Thank you. That was very nice. Thank you. Final
Uh,
thoughts,
the
Mr. Jacobo?
question one more time was, what can someone do to learn more about Islam? Was that the question?
Yes.
So, um, I will try to make it simple. You have to first ask yourself a question, a simple question. Am I the biggest thing in this universe? If your answer to that question is no, then the next question should be, is there something bigger? And if you can answer that question, there's something bigger, and you want to learn more about Islam, then you have to just, like Diego said, you have to learn who is Muhammad, what is the message that he brought. Those three things, right? Because they have something known as the Shahada. La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah. The first part, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God. And then the second part, and Muhammad is his prophet, right? You may not agree with the second part, but you may agree with the first part. There's no God but God. And God is a loaded term culturally, right? There is nothing bigger than the source, right? Whatever word you want to associate with. You might call it Yahweh, you might call it Allah, you might call it Jehovah, you might call it Jah, whatever. Is there something bigger that's responsible for existence? If so, is Muhammad a prophet? I actually heard one sheikh uh, refer to atheists as almost halfway there because they say there is no God. If they finish the sentence, there is no God but God, they're almost there, right? But at least they're thinking critically. And to be honest, I am 100% okay with people disagreeing with it, as long as you're just willing to think critically about things.
Great, great. Very wise words from both of you. Thank you very much. I just want to add, if you allow, find your community, find people in the community that uh, has the same faith or practice Islam. Talk to them, get around mosques. There's also schools, and there's plenty of information on the internet. Watch us again. We're going to be sharing a lot more thoughts about the Quran, about the Hadith, and many other thoughts. I'm not in it, so I'm learning every day from these two. So it's really nice to be part of it. And I want to thank both of you for sharing all this great knowledge with us. It was really good to have some background. I'm sure there's a lot more that you guys are going to be sharing. Our next podcast, we're going to continue talking about the Hadith, right?
Yeah,
That we
we've
did
got one
already.
scheduled
So
for. Are you going to be available tomorrow night after 8?
I think so. Yeah, we'll be there.
Just in case, we might do tomorrow's at 5 p.m., but if you want to watch it, and then we can do a reaction video to it.
Sure. As I said, our podcast is going having different ways, different roads, and we're focusing on this right now until we link into something else. We have new guests. Hopefully, we have guests coming in too to speak about Christianity. I already have some thoughts in mind. If you like it, if you want to be part of it, if you have questions, leave it in the comments. If you really like it and you learned something from us today, just click that like button and share our link with everyone else. So thank you very much, guys, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other, as Jerry Springer would say. Take care.